The quarantine zone. The vast emptiness of space held many secrets, but none quite as intriguing as Section 47X, better known throughout the galaxy as the quarantine zone. For 3,000 cycles, the most advanced civilizations had declared this region of space strictly off-limits, enforcing their decree with automated defense platforms and regular patrols. High Commander Vexthor of the Zarketh Enforcement Fleet stood at the observation deck of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, his iridescent scales reflecting the distant starlight. His species had been entrusted with maintaining the quarantine for the past 5 centuries, a task they performed with characteristic arrogance and unwavering dedication. High Commander, his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zura, approached with an urgent report. "We've detected unusual energy signatures from within the restricted sector again. They'd match the pattern we've been tracking for the past 30 cycles." Vexthor's vertical pupils narrowed to thin slits. "Show me." The holographic display materialized before them, showing a 3-dimensional map of the quarantine zone. Scattered throughout the supposedly empty region were dozens of small, pulsing points of light. They shouldn't have been there. Nothing should have been there. The humans. Vexthor hissed the word like a curse. "Those persistent vermin have found their way in again." "Sir, these readings suggest." Zyra hesitated, her throat frills fluttering with concern. "These aren't just scout ships or lost vessels. These signatures indicate permanent settlements. Large ones." The High Commander's talons dug into the metallic railing of the observation deck. When humanity had first achieved faster-than-light travel a mere century ago, the galactic community had dismissed them as primitive newcomers. The quarantine zone protocols had been explained to them, just as they were explained to all emerging spacefaring races. The humans had nodded, agreed, and then proceeded to do exactly what they were told not to do. "How many settlements do we estimate?" "At least 15 major colonies, sir. And these energy signatures, they're unlike anything we've seen before. They appear to be utilizing technology that's forbidden under Galactic Council Directive 459B. Vexthor fought to maintain his composure. The humans weren't just violating the quarantine. They were adapting and modifying restricted technology. The very thought was heretical. Technology had to be developed in the proper sequence, following the sacred paths of advancement laid down by the Ancient Ones. To do otherwise invited chaos. "Prepare a full battle group," he ordered. "We'll start with the largest settlement. Make an example of them." "Sir," Zyra's voice dropped to a whisper, "the last time we confronted human colonists, that was different," Vexthor snapped. "They caught us off guard with their primitive but effective tactics. We've studied their methods now. They won't surprise us again." As the Eternal Vigilance changed course, heading deeper into the quarantine zone, Vexthor received a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. The holographic form of Council member Xinra, an ancient being of pure energy, materialized before him. "High Commander," the ethereal voice echoed in his mind. "Our sensors indicate you're preparing for military action against human settlements." "Yes, Council member. They'd violated our most sacred laws. They must be. You will take no action against them without Council approval." The interruption was sharp, unusual for the normally diplomatic Xinra. "But the protocols are more complex than you understand." Xinra's form flickered. "There is much about the quarantine zone that was never revealed to your species, High Commander. The humans, they are not what we expected. Their presence there may be more significant than you realize." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vexthor in confused silence. For the first time in his long career, he felt a flutter of uncertainty in his secondary heart. What weren't they being told about the quarantine zone? And why did the Council seem almost afraid of confronting the humans directly? As the Eternal Vigilance continued its journey, long-range sensors detected something else. Massive energy spikes deep within the restricted space, far beyond the human settlements. Something was stirring in the darkness, something that had slumbered for eons, And somehow, the humans had placed themselves directly between that ancient force and the rest of the galaxy. "High Commander," Zyra reported, her voice tense. "We're picking up a transmission from the human settlements. They're requesting a diplomatic meeting." Vexthor's scales rippled with mixed emotions. "They know we're coming." "Sir, according to these readings, they've known we were here long before we detected them." The implication sent a chill through his thermal regulation system. Just how much had they underestimated these newcomers? And what else were they about to discover in this forbidden region of space? "Accept the invitation," he ordered, surprising himself. "But keep our weapons primed. These humans have ignored our warnings for too long. One way or another, they will learn the price of their defiance." Little did Vexthor know, it was the Zarketh who were about to learn a costly lesson about underestimating humanity's resourcefulness and determination. The true purpose of the quarantine zone was about to be revealed, and with it, the reason why humans seemed uniquely suited to thriving in this forbidden realm. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of galactic society and force everyone to question the ancient laws they have followed for millennia. The humans hadn't just entered the quarantine zone. They had made it their own, and they were prepared to defend it. Breaking point. The human diplomatic station hung in space like a challenge to everything the Zarketh believed in. Instead of the elegant, standardized architecture approved by the Galactic Council, it was a hodgepodge of different structural styles, materials, and technologies that had no business working together. Yet somehow it did. High Commander Vexthor's diplomatic shuttle approached the station, his internal organs churning with disgust at the sight of forbidden technologies brazenly integrated into its design. Ancient particle diffusion arrays that should have been sealed away in museum vaults were being used as common power conductors. Theoretical prototype shields that had been banned for their instability were somehow functioning as standard defensive barriers. "Sir," Zyra reported from her station, "their docking protocols. They're unlike anything in our database." "Of course they are," Vexthor muttered. "When have humans ever followed established procedures?" The docking procedure itself proved surprisingly smooth, despite its unorthodox nature. As Vexthor and his small delegation made their way through the airlock, they were greeted by a sight that stopped them in their tracks. A human female stood waiting for them, but she was unlike any human they had encountered in official capacities before. Where most human diplomats attempted to match alien formal wear, she wore what appeared to be practical work clothes, stained with various mechanical fluids. Her gray hair was tied back messily, and she carried herself with the casual confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. "High Commander," she nodded, not bothering with the traditional Zarketh greeting gestures. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief Administrator of the Perseus Colony Cluster. Welcome to New Horizons Station. You stand in violation of over 30 Galactic Council directives." Vexthor began, trying to seize control of the conversation. "Your presence here is precisely where we need to be," she interrupted, turning to lead them down a corridor. "Walk with me, Commander. There's something you need to see." The casual dismissal of protocol left Vexthor speechless for a moment. Behind him, he could sense his delegation's growing unease. The station's interior was even more shocking than its exterior. Impossible technological combinations surrounded them, functioning in ways that defied established scientific principles. "How?" he finally managed to ask, gesturing at a particularly egregious example where quantum-locked crystalline matrices were being used as simple computer terminals. These systems should be tearing each other apart. Dr. Chen smiled, the expression somehow both warm and grimly satisfied. "That's what everyone said when we first started experimenting. Turns out the Ancient One's tech tree isn't as linear as everyone assumed. Sometimes you have to think sideways instead of upward." They entered what appeared to be a central control room, where dozens of humans worked at stations that mixed cutting-edge technology with artifacts that belonged in museums. On the main display was a map of the quarantine zone that made Vexthor's scales ripple in shock. It was alive with activity. Not just the human settlements they had detected, but massive energy signatures deep within the zone, patterns and movements that shouldn't exist. And strangest of all, the human colonies seemed to be arranged in a very specific pattern around these anomalies. You don't actually know what this zone was created to contain, do you, Commander? Dr. Chen asked quietly. Before Vexthor could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The main display shifted, showing a massive energy surge from one of the deepest regions of the quarantine zone. Right on schedule, Dr. Chen sighed, suddenly looking tired. You might want to contact your ship, Commander. Tell them to power down all non-essential systems and match the emission signature we're about to broadcast to them. You dare to give orders, Toe? The lights flickered, and something vast and dark passed by the station's external cameras. Something that shouldn't exist, something that had only been whispered about in ancient legends. They called themselves the Harvesters. Dr. Chen explained as Vexthor stared in horror at the readings. The Ancient Ones didn't create this zone to keep people out. They created it to keep these things in. And they've been sleeping all this time, until about 50 years ago, when they started waking up. Impossible, Zyra whispered. The legends spoke of them as myths, as parables about the danger of uncontrolled technological advancement. Oh, they're real enough. And they're hungry after their long sleep. Dr. Chen's fingers flew over her console, initiating what appeared to be a well-practiced series of protocols. The reason we've been so successful here, the reason your precious tech tree doesn't apply to us, is because we had to adapt. Quickly. The Ancient Ones spent millennia developing their technology in careful, measured steps. We didn't have that luxury. The massive shape moved past again, closer this time. Vexthor could see it clearly now, a vast construct of impossible geometries and dark purpose, its surface rippling with energies that hurt his eyes to look at. Your ship needs to power down now, Commander, Dr. Chen insisted. These things are drawn to certain energy signatures. The wrong emission pattern acts like a dinner bell. Vexthor fought with his pride for a moment before sending the order. As his ship complied, he watched in amazement as the human station seemed to shift its energy patterns, becoming almost invisible to his instruments despite being right in front of him. We've mapped their hunting patterns, Dr. Chen continued, found ways to hide from them, studied their behaviors. That's why our colonies are arranged the way they are. We're creating a containment grid, using modified versions of the Ancient Ones technology that we found here. Technology that everyone else was too afraid to even study, let alone adapt. The Council must be informed, Vexthor declared, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. The Council has known all along, she replied with a bitter smile. Why do you think they really gave you the job of patrolling this zone? You weren't keeping people out, Commander. You were the first line of defense in case anything got out. We're just the first ones who decided to take a more proactive approach. As if to emphasize her point, another alarm sounded, and the main display showed 3 more massive shapes emerging from the depths of the quarantine zone. The human operators moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting energy patterns, redirecting power flows, maintaining their careful invisibility. So, Dr. Chen turned to face him fully. Should we discuss what real cooperation might look like? Because those things aren't going back to sleep, and your patrol fleet isn't going to be enough to stop them when they finally figure out how to break through the containment grid. Vexthor looked from the human woman to the ancient horrors moving through space around them, and felt the foundations of his worldview beginning to crack. The price of underestimating humanity was becoming clearer with each passing moment, and it was a price the galaxy couldn't afford to pay. The hidden arsenal. 3 days after the revelation of the Harvesters, High Commander Vexthor found himself doing something he never thought possible, voluntarily touring the human military installation deep within the quarantine zone. The facility, known as Gibraltar Point, had been built into an asteroid that, according to all official scans, shouldn't exist. Quantum camouflage, Dr. Chen explained as they walked through corridors lined with humming machinery. We reverse engineered it from harvester technology. They use it to hide until they're ready to feed. We use it to hide what we're building. And what exactly are you building? Vexthor asked, noting how his delegation had been reduced to just himself and Zira. The rest had been evacuated back to safer space, carrying urgent messages to the Zarketh High Command. They entered a vast chamber that answered his question more eloquently than words could have. Suspended in massive construction bays were weapons, dozens of them, unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever authorized. Each one was a unique combination of salvaged harvester technology, Ancient One's artifacts, and human innovation. "We call this one the Sunforge," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a massive cannon that pulsed with barely contained stellar energy. "It uses the same principles the harvesters use to consume solar radiation, but we've reversed the process. Instead of absorbing energy, it releases it, all of it, at once." Zyra's throat frills fluttered in alarm. The energy requirements must be impossible by conventional standards. A new voice joined them. A tall human male approached, wearing the same practical workwear as Chen. "That's why we had to get creative. I'm Dr. Marcus Wong, head of our weapons development program." "Creative how?" Vexthor demanded, his scientific curiosity warring with his ingrained caution. Wong led them to a monitoring station where multiple displays showed real-time data from throughout the quarantine zone. "We discovered that the Ancient Ones didn't just leave behind weapons and technology. They left behind power sources, massive ones, scattered throughout the zone. The harvesters have been feeding on them, growing stronger. We've been adapting them, creating our own grid." A warning klaxon suddenly blared through the facility. On the main display, a massive shape was moving through the darkness of space, larger than any they had seen before. "Right on schedule," Chen muttered, then turned to Vexthor. "Still want to see how creative we can be, Commander." Before he could respond, the facility burst into coordinated activity. Humans rushed to battle stations with practiced efficiency, and the entire asteroid began to thrum with power that made Vexthor's scales tingle uncomfortably. "That's a Class 3 harvester," Wong explained, his fingers dancing over control panels. "They usually travel in groups, so its friends won't be far behind. We've been waiting for a chance to test the Sunforge in actual combat conditions." "You're going to attack it?" Zyra asked, incredulous. "The legends say it takes entire fleets to even damage a harvester." "The legends were working with conventional weapons," Chen smiled grimly. "Watch and learn." The massive chamber ceiling began to retract, revealing the star-filled void above. The harvester was visible now, its impossible geometry casting shadows that shouldn't exist. As Vexthor watched, the creature seemed to notice the facility, turning its attention toward them with predatory interest. "Energy signature detected," a calm AI voice announced. Multiple additional signatures emerging from deep space. Class 3 harvester confirmed as primary target. Secondary targets analyzing as Class 2 and Class 1 configurations. "Perfect." Wong's smile matched Chen's. "Let's see how they handle our little surprise. All stations, initiate Protocol Prometheus." The Sunforge cannon began to rise from its construction bay, its crystalline matrices glowing with increasing intensity. Around it, smaller weapons platforms activated, each one a unique hybrid of technologies that should never have worked together. "Commander," Chen turned to Vexthor, "you might want to send word to your ship to fall back to a safe distance. This is going to get rather bright." The harvester was approaching rapidly now, its surface rippling with hungry energy as it prepared to feed. Behind it, two more shapes emerged from the darkness, equally massive and horrifying. "Targeting solution acquired," the AI announced. "Quantum resonance aligned. Power levels at maximum sustainable threshold." "You do realize," Vexthor found himself saying, "that if this fails, we'll have attracted the attention of 3 harvesters with no chance of escape." "That's humanity for you," Wong chuckled. "We don't just think outside the box. We tear it apart and build something new from the pieces." Fire main weapon. The Sunforge cannon activated with a sound that seemed to tear reality itself. A beam of pure stellar energy, as bright as a newborn sun, lanced out toward the approaching harvester. The creature's surface rippled, attempting to absorb the energy as it would from any other weapon. That was exactly what the humans had been counting on. The beam contained more than just energy. It carried within it a carefully engineered quantum virus, designed to turn the harvester's own feeding process against it. As the creature attempted to consume the energy, it began to fold in upon itself, its impossible geometries becoming even more impossible. Secondary weapons, fire at will, Chen ordered. A barrage of smaller weapons opened up, each one targeting specific points on the harvester's writhing form. Some fired beams that seemed to age matter by centuries and seconds. Others released swarms of nanites that had been programmed with impossible instructions about the nature of reality itself. The harvester's two companions began to advance, but they were too late. With a silent explosion that rippled through multiple dimensions, the first creature simply ceased to exist, leaving behind nothing but a rapidly dispersing cloud of quantum particles. Target eliminated, the AI confirmed. Recalibrating weapons for secondary targets. Warning: power systems at 60% and falling. That's enough for today, Chen ordered. Active stealth protocols. Let's disappear before its friends decide to avenge it. The entire facility seemed to shift and blur, and suddenly the approaching harvesters stopped, their sensors unable to locate their prey. After several tense minutes, they retreated back into the depths of the quarantine zone. That, Chen turned to Vexthor, was just one weapon from one facility. We have dozens more scattered throughout the zone, each with its own unique capabilities. Still think we're just primitive upstarts who need to be taught our place. Vexthor stared at the spot where the harvester had been, his worldview shifting fundamentally. Why show us this? Why now? Because the harvesters are waking up faster than ever, Wang answered grimly. Our containment grid is holding for now, but we're going to need help to upgrade it into a proper defense network. And that means the Galactic Council needs to stop treating us like children and start treating us like the allies we need to be. The price of underestimating humanity, Chen added softly, isn't just political anymore. It's existential. So, Commander, are you ready to have a real discussion about cooperation? Vexthor looked at the displays showing more harvester signatures emerging from the depths of space, then back at the humans who had just done the impossible. The choice, he realized, had already been made for him. The real question was whether the rest of the galaxy would be wise enough to make the same choice before it was too late. Shattered assumptions. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unprecedented in several ways. First, it was being held in the quarantine zone itself, aboard the human station New Horizons. Second, humans had been granted speaking privileges, something usually reserved for species with at least a millennium of spacefaring history. And third, High Commander Vexthor of the Zarketh was speaking in defense of human actions. The footage you have witnessed is not altered, Vexthor concluded, his scales shifting uncomfortably under the collective gaze of the Council's most powerful members. I saw the weapon's effectiveness myself. The humans have achieved what we long thought impossible. They've found a way to destroy the harvesters. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices and telepathic broadcasts. Dr. Chen stood calmly at the center of the storm, her practical work clothes still stained with engine grease, a deliberate contrast to the ornate ceremonial garb of the council members. If what you say is true, council member Xindra's ethereal form pulsed with concern, then the humans have violated over 300 safety protocols in developing these weapons. Safety protocols, Dr. Wang scoffed from his position beside Chen, that were designed to prevent exactly the kind of innovation needed to fight these creatures. The Ancient Ones didn't just leave behind technology. They left behind warnings. Warnings we finally managed to decrypt. He gestured, and holographic symbols filled the chamber, writings in the Ancient One's script that made several council members recoil in recognition. You can read the first tongue. demanded Kavor, the insectoid representative of the hive consortiums. That knowledge is restricted to. We didn't read it, Chen interrupted. We wrote an AI that could decode it. Another violation of your protocols, I'm sure, but it revealed something you all need to see. The symbols rearranged themselves, forming a three-dimensional star chart of the quarantine zone. As the council watched, pulsing red markers began to appear throughout the map, each one representing a dormant harvester. There are thousands of them. Chen's voice cut through the shocked silence. The ones we've encountered so far are just the advanced scouts. The main swarm is still dormant, buried deep in fold space pockets throughout the zone. And according to the Ancient One's records, they're all connected to a central intelligence, a queen for lack of a better term. Impossible, breathed Sinra. The legends speak of the harvesters as solitary predators. The legends were wrong about a lot of things. Wang stepped forward, or perhaps deliberately misleading. We found evidence that the Ancient Ones themselves created the harvesters as a weapon against their enemies. But like most weapons of mass destruction, it backfired. The harvesters evolved beyond their control. The quarantine zone isn't just a containment system, Chen added. It's a prison. And the Ancient Ones weren't just its builders. They were its first victims. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Vexthor watched the council members' reactions, noting how many seemed less surprised than they should have been. You knew, he realized aloud. Some of you knew the truth about this zone, about the real threat it contained. That's why the patrol protocols were so specific about energy signatures and communication frequencies. We knew components of the truth, Zinra admitted reluctantly. Each council race was entrusted with fragments of knowledge, to ensure no one species could access the full dangerous reality. It was meant to prevent exactly this kind of reckless experimentation. And instead, Chen's voice carried a sharp edge. You left us all vulnerable. The harvesters are adapting faster than your containment protocols can handle. They're learning, evolving, finding new ways to feed. Our weapons work for now, but each encounter teaches them something new. The holographic display shifted, showing the energy readings from the recent battle. The surviving harvesters had already begun developing countermeasures to the Sunforg's quantum virus. We need to stop pretending humanity is the problem here, Wang insisted. We need full access to all the Ancient One's records, all the fragments of knowledge you've been hoarding. And we need it now, before. The station's emergency alarms cut him off. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing a massive energy surge deep within the quarantine zone. Something was moving in the darkness, something far larger than any harvester they'd encountered before. Speaking of the Queen, Chen muttered, her hands flying over a control panel. Ladies, gentlemen, and varied consciousness forms of the Council, I suggest we table the discussion of our protocol violations. You're about to see exactly why we've been preparing for war. The readings were off the scale. Whatever was stirring in the depths of space was ancient, massive, and very, very angry. The Queen of the Harvesters was awakening, and with her, the full swarm would not be far behind. Well, Chen looked around at the assembled council members. Still want to debate the proper procedures for technological advancement? Or should we start talking about how to survive what's coming? The containment protocols. Kavor buzzed anxiously. They were supposed to keep her dormant for at least another millennium. Your protocols, Wang said grimly, assumed the harvesters couldn't evolve, couldn't learn, couldn't adapt. Making assumptions about life forms is dangerous. You assumed humanity would follow your rules without question. You assumed the harvesters would stay dormant. How many more fatal assumptions are built into your precious protocols? The station shuddered as another energy wave rolled through space. On the display, dormant harvesters were beginning to stir, responding to their queen's awakening. Time's up, Chen announced. Make your choice, council members. Work with us, really work with us, as equals, or watch as everything the Ancient Ones built, everything you've preserved, gets consumed. Because we're going to fight either way. The only question is whether we do it together or alone. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions as the full gravity of the situation became clear. The price of underestimating humanity had led them here, to a moment of crisis where the old ways would either adapt or crumble in the face of an ancient nightmare's return. A new order. The next 48 hours transformed the quarantine zone into the largest military staging ground in galactic history. With the Council's reluctant blessing, ships from every major spacefaring race converged on human installations, bringing with them the fragments of ancient One knowledge they'd hoarded for millennia. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in Gibraltar Point's newly established Joint Command Center, watching as alien technicians worked alongside human engineers to integrate their combined knowledge into something that might save them all. The Queen's neural network is expanding exponentially, Dr. Wong reported, his eyes fixed on the massive display showing the awakening swarm. Every harvester she activates adds to her processing power. At this rate, she'll have control of the entire dormant fleet within 72 hours. Time estimate until full awakening? High Commander Vexthor asked. The Zarkith officer had proven surprisingly adaptable, becoming one of humanity's strongest advocates in the chaos of preparation. Less than 24 hours, Chen answered grimly. But we got something she doesn't expect. Show them, Marcus. Wong nodded and activated a secure holographic projection. Above the command center materialized the image of a massive space station, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Its design incorporated technology from every council race, bound together by human innovation and desperate creativity. We call it the Prometheus Cradle, Chen explained. We've been building it in secret for the past 5 years, hidden in a fold space pocket of our own design. It's powered by 13 ancient One energy cores, modified and integrated in ways that would give your safety committees nightmares. By the first light, breathed Xinra's ethereal form. The power requirements alone should tear it apart. Should, but won't, Wong smiled. Because we finally figured out what all your carefully separated knowledge fragments were trying to tell us. The Ancient Ones didn't fail because their weapon turned against them. They failed because they weren't willing to adapt when it did. The station's alarms blared again as another massive energy wave rippled through space. On the main display, the Harvester Queen's form became visible for the first time. A vast, crystalline consciousness spreading through space like a living constellation. All stations, battle positions, Chen ordered. This is what we've prepared for. All ships, assume defensive formations according to Protocol Omega. Emergency quantum channels only from this point forward. The assembled fleet, the largest in galactic history, moved into position around the Prometheus Cradle. Ships that had once been enemies now flew in perfect coordination, their crews united by the understanding that failure meant extinction. The Queen is achieving full consciousness, Wong reported. She's already adapting to our standard weapon configurations. The Sunforge technology won't work twice. It doesn't need to. Chen smiled grimly. Because this time, we're not trying to destroy her. We're going to do something much worse. The Prometheus Cradle began to power up, its impossible construction drawing energy from sources that shouldn't exist. The Queen seemed to sense the danger, directing her swarm toward them with terrifying speed. Now, Marcus. Wong's fingers flew over the controls, initiating a sequence that made reality itself shudder. The Prometheus Cradle wasn't just a weapon. It was a key, designed to unlock the very principles that made the Harvesters possible. By all the ancient laws, Vexthor whispered, "What have you done?" We reversed it, Chen explained as space itself began to warp around them. Everything the Ancient Ones used to create the Harvesters, everything that makes them possible. We found a way to invert it. They're not just weapons that got out of control. They're a fundamental violation of universe's operating principles, held together by the Queen's consciousness. The Harvester swarm reached their position, but it was too late. The Prometheus Cradle activated fully, sending out waves of restructured reality that made the hostile creatures writhe in spaces between spaces. Their own nature is their weakness, Wong added. They exist by breaking universal laws. We just reminded the universe of those laws. The effect was catastrophic and beautiful. The harvesters began to fold in on themselves, their impossible geometries collapsing as fundamental reality reasserted itself. The Queen's vast consciousness screamed in frequencies that shouldn't exist, trying desperately to hold her children together. All ships, full power to reality anchors, Chen ordered. Don't let them pull us in with them. The combined fleet held position as space itself convulsed around them. One by one, the harvesters winked out of existence, their fundamental impossibility finally catching up with them. The Queen's consciousness fragmented and scattered, her ancient power finally meeting something it couldn't adapt to, the very laws of physics themselves. When it was over, the quarantine zone was quiet for the first time in millennia. Where thousands of harvesters had been, there was nothing but normal, peaceful space. Status report, Chen called out, her voice hoarse. Reality stabilizing. Wang confirmed. No trace of harvester signatures remaining. The Queen's neural network has completely collapsed. We did it. The command center erupted in celebrations that transcended species boundaries. Centuries of protocol and prejudice had been washed away by the simple need to survive. What now? Vexthor asked quietly, turning to Chen. The quarantine zone's purpose is gone. The protocols that governed it need to be completely rewritten, she finished, along with a lot of other assumptions about how species should develop and interact. The old order nearly got us all killed. Time for something new. The Council will resist, Xinhua warned, though their tone held more resignation than threat. The Council, Wang pointed out, is standing in a human military installation that just saved the galaxy using technology they said was impossible. I think the time for resistance is over. Chen looked out at the assembled fleet, at the impossible cooperation that had been achieved in mere days of desperate need. We're not asking for dominion, she said firmly. We're asking for partnership. Real partnership, without artificial restrictions or hidden fears. The price of underestimating humanity was nearly the end of everything. Maybe the reward for trusting us can be a better beginning. As the gathered representatives began discussing the shape of that new beginning, a message flashed across the main display. Deep in the quarantine zone, the Ancient One's automated systems were shutting down, their purpose finally fulfilled. The last message they broadcast, translated simultaneously into every known language, was brief but profound. The test is complete. The children are ready. Guide them well. Chen looked at Wang, then at Vexthor and the other alien representatives. Well, she smiled. I guess we all had some growing up to do. The price of underestimating humanity had been high, but the reward for finally accepting them promised to be higher still. As the assembled fleet began the journey home, the stars seemed somehow brighter, illuminating the path to a future where no species' potential would ever be underestimated again.